guys, welcome back to Tea and Taboo. For those of you who don't know what this is, we love this space to be able to talk about things that are kind of unconventional and things that we kind of throw under the rug. We're really pumped today to have two special guests from Texas. We're gonna get to know them here in just a minute, but before we do that, we obviously have to talk about what we're drinking today. So I'll get us started, and then we'll go Nissi, Al, Priya, and then Angelin. So today I unfortunately have coffee, not tea, because guys, we are recording this on Saturday morning, so we're all still trying to wake up. So yeah, I've got some black coffee.
I'm pretty basic with my little snowman cup ready for winter, y'all. But all I have is water.
I'm rocking the mug from downstairs. I didn't get to bring my office mug. I really wanted to. But this is just regular old black coffee.
And I'm rocking my M cup because our first and last name has nothing to do with M. So it's just a mystery. It's a mystery why this mug is here. But inside is the Harney and Son cinnamon tea. It's really good. Go check it out. Shout out to Jency James who got me on it.
I sadly don't have any liquid in this. I just was like, oh, tea and taboo. I had to bring it out, but I do have water for this. As we are having Alex and Priya, I just want to go ahead and ask you guys to introduce yourselves to everyone. How did you guys meet? Just a little bit about yourselves.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you all so much for having us. We're super honored that you would ask us to be a part of this Tea and Taboo, and we're just really, really excited to get to just hang out with you guys and talk about some things. But my name's Al, and this is Priya. And
Did you forget my name?
yeah, I had to think for a second.
Priya?
I had to think for a second. I was like, wait, what? No, we're from Dallas, Texas, and yeah, we've been married for a little more than a year now.
Mm-hmm. How did we meet? We have known each other a really long time. I think we're not quite sure. We talk about this all the time. We're not exactly sure the first time that we met, but we both grew up in AG churches that did a lot of different collaborations. And so I think a VBS or something is probably our first interaction with each other. And yeah, it was one of those situations where everyone always tried to set us up with each other throughout the years.
Yeah.
And then finally one day you wake up and you're like, oh yeah, it's probably a good idea. And then here we are, married.
All right. So today we're talking about the process of engagement and how to navigate life up until the point of marriage. So Joanna, you want to take us away?
Yeah, let's do it. So we are wrapping this up. We've been doing a relationship series now for 2 months. We went all the way from singleness. Now we're ending it with engagement and marriage. So we're really excited to hear what y'all have to say, Al and Priya, because the three of us are not experienced in this area at all. So let's dive right into it. I think we had a similar question like this the last Tea and Taboo as well, but I love this question because I think in the day and age that we live in, it's so important to know what's important to look for. So we just want to know what are some specific things that y'all looked for and you said, you know what, these are non-negotiables, I'm not going to compromise. And how did that impact your marriage? Al, this one's for you.
Yeah, so it's so funny because growing up, you always hear you have to have your list of what you're looking for in a spouse, and so I created one, Priya created one, but the older we get, it's interesting how that list changes over time because I'm not the same person that I was 5 years ago, and so that list gets smaller and smaller and smaller. But what you can change is those non-negotiables, those things that you're just you have to have in a spouse. And for me, that was a pretty small list. The first and foremost thing was she has to love the Lord, love Jesus, be a Christian. The Bible says you have to be equally yoked, and so that's the most important thing. And then the second thing for me personally was to love family. I love my family, and I wanted someone who also loves family, but would love my family as her own. And And I found that in Priya. And honestly, after that, those are the only non-negotiables I had. Everything else was kind of nice to have. And going through our first year of marriage, just the things that we've gone through, I couldn't imagine being with someone who didn't have the same faith or the same values as me, because um, it was just one of those things that as you go through the stresses of life, having that shared faith just makes your bond even stronger and helps you kind of get through it, because you both have that hope in Christ. And I just couldn't imagine going through life with someone who didn't share those same values.
Yeah, and like to tag team on what he said there, like what he kind of hit in the beginning. Like as a young girl, I had so many lists. Like I started making lists on what I wanted in a future husband when I think it was like 10 or 11. Like even I was looking through my stuff the other day and I found like a diary from when I was 13, and it's like kind of ridiculous some of the things that I was looking for back then, right? It was like wants a nice guy, but not too nice. Now I'm like, what? Why would I want a mean guy? Like that doesn't make any sense. So just knowing that like the details, maybe they don't matter so much or they might change over time, but what God has for you is just so much better than like the little list that you can curate yourself, right? All he really asks you to do is to find somebody who is also walking with him, because that just makes life so much easier, right? Marriage is hard enough, so to not be equally yoked is going to throw in a complexity that just is not going to be good. But yeah, the rest of it, just trusting that what the Lord has for you is the best for you and more than what you can try to put down in a list, if that makes sense.
As we're talking about like what you want to have and what is like really needed, Priya,
Mhm.
this question is for you. How different was the expectation versus uh like reality, like entering into marriage and living together? Like what were certain things that like caught you off guard in that process?
A lot of things. um, like when we were dating, I feel like a phrase that we threw around a lot was, "Oh my gosh, me too." Like we're exactly the same and we think exactly the same. We're so compatible. I've never dated anyone who I was this compatible with. And then you get married and you're like, "This is an alien. I don't understand how you could be so different." And really, I think just for people who are maybe dating and they think, "Oh, we've been dating for like 10 years, there's not going to be any sort of surprise." No, like if you're not living together, there's going to be a lot of surprises, because you grew up in one house, your spouse grew up in another house, and you come together and silly petty things might really throw you off, right? Like the way that you like squeeze a toothbrush thing in the morning, or like just like really small things like can
How you put
really
the toilet
throw you
paper?
off.
Is it
Yeah.
over? Is it under? Like
Yeah.
small stuff like that.
Who's taking out the trash? Like, for instance, in my house, my dad always took out the trash, so I just automatically expected that, like Al would take out the trash because that's how I always saw it. Like, there's tiny things that you don't really think about. I will say what an exercise that we did in premarital counseling that was super helpful was we had like an expectation list, and it went from what all did it have? It
Yeah,
had
like who's gonna do the grocery shopping? Who's gonna make the list? Who's gonna do the laundry, the
how are you going to
chores?
celebrate birthdays? Like, is it going to be underrated? Is it going to be, you're going on trips? Like, it's just, it went through all of these different things, and that kind of opened our eyes, like, right before marriage. I wouldn't say it, like, solved anything, but it let us know, like, it was kind of like a precursor of, like, oh, this is probably going to be something that we are going to like see differently. And then I guess throughout marriage we figured out like good compromises, or a system that works for us. But yeah, I would say there's a big, if you think that there's not going to be a difference between the expectation versus reality, there is. I feel like 100% of the time there's going to be a difference.
And I think just to add on that, it's really important to communicate these expectations early on. One thing that we learned in marriage counseling is that uncommunicated expectations leads to disappointment which leads to disconnect. And then ultimately they were like, that will lead to divorce. You know, and it could be from the smallest of things, like something that I might see as insignificant or doesn't really matter might be more significant to Priya. And so I think talking about these things and understanding how your spouse feels about them early on is very important, and not to just brush off anything and think, oh yeah, it's not that big of a deal, because like she said, I was raised one way and she was raised another way, and what's important to me may not be important to her and vice versa. So I think it's so crucial for these expectations, communicate that to your spouse clearly so that you guys are on the same page and can come to a healthy compromise or a healthy middle on a lot of these things.
That's good. So, question is, did y'all decide on toilet paper top or bottom?
There's only one way to do it. Come on, it has to
We
be over the
agreed on
top.
that. We
We
agreed
agree
on
on
that.
that.
The toothpaste thing, I'm one of those I just squeeze wherever, and I
I
think
can't do that.
Oh,
I
okay.
can't do that. You have to go from the bottom. Maximize
You
the
have to go
efficiency,
from the bottom.
You have
right?
to go
Like,
from the
come
Mm.
on.
I'm with
and
Priya.
we
You
compromise
squeeze
by
where
me forgetting every morning that you're supposed to go from the bottom.
So then every morning, like after, when I'm brushing my teeth, I'll have to like straighten it out and like get to the bottom. It's like,
yeah, I'm with you.
oh y'all,
Uh,
Nissy's on the same page.
as as exciting as it is to find your person and get married and all that kind of stuff. I feel like a lot of times marriage can seem daunting, especially for those of us who haven't been married yet. We hear about different issues that people have, different disagreements that people have, and there's like a balance between excitement and being like, oh my gosh, that's what marriage is? Like, do I really want that? So I just wanted to ask what you guys do to keep your marriage thriving instead of just surviving. So what are some of those things that y'all do?
I think it's really important to never stop being a student of your spouse. You know, like learn everything and anything about your spouse, what makes them tick, what they love. Focus on the little things. And I think what I've learned about Priya is it's not always the grand gestures that she appreciates. She loves those, but at the same time, like I've heard her communicate to me most times is like, oh, like the small little details that I'll pick up on every once in a while, and she really, really appreciates those. And I think it's because that shows a lot more effort, because it shows that you're listening, that you care about, your spouse, that, you took the time to be intentional about specific things. So I think that's one big area where it kind of helps us to keep thriving, because it's like focusing on the little things that matter to your spouse. And a couple other things, like we love date nights. So in marriage counseling, they said, don't ever stop dating your spouse, because it's so easy to get into the routine of life and get stuck into this like busyness of life. I feel like after we got married, there's just like no time for anything. Like we're always like on the go doing something. And so it's really important for us to kind of disconnect sometimes and just, spend time to us, for us to be together. We love traveling, so we'll try to take like trips every once in a while together. Even if it's like a road trip somewhere in Texas, like we'll do that for a weekend just to kind of get away and disconnect. We like to do these quarterly retreats where we'll just like get away for a weekend, see a new place, eat some good food, and then kind of just reflect on what God's done over the past couple months. Um, and then yeah, I think another big portion that we'll probably talk about later is just building good Christian community that you can be around and just kind of build your relationship up together and just kind of build your faith up together as well.
So this next question is definitely one that I've heard people with different levels of tolerance for this, all the way from no, you can't have friends in the opposite gender to like, oh, like we're best friends with our spouse's friends. Like, I've heard all sorts of answers. How do you feel about opposite gender friendships after marriage? Are you okay with it? And what are some expectations you have with your partner about like limits? Like, what are those boundaries and stuff look like? Priya, this is for you.
So I don't. Well, let me start off by saying I think friendships are a great thing, right? So I don't think the answer is like a flat out no. Like I think it is possible to have friends with the opposite gender, but there's an asterisk I think with it. So it's um, what are the boundaries, and have those boundaries been set up by both you and your partner? Like, are they clearly communicated with your spouse that, like, hey, this is what this is our decision on how we approach this. And so I think first and foremost, there has to be this like level of transparency, right? So if you ever find yourself like wanting to hide something from your spouse, like, that's a red flag. Like, this relationship probably is not a good thing. And two, I think if your spouse has any sort, like any level of just discomfort, or just feels like this isn't a good thing, even if the relationship between you and this friend is completely innocent and they have absolutely no reason, your spouse has absolutely no reason why they're uncomfortable with it, I think you end it, right? Because above all else, you prioritize your relationship with your spouse, and you prioritize their feelings. So I mean, that's just where it is. Like, that's the end all.
Yeah.
How does your spouse feel? And then as far as like what are the boundaries, I think I've heard a lot of different things. I think we just don't put ourselves in situations that could lead to trouble. And I'm not saying that this is like a that everyone should do this, but that means, I think for us, that means, like one-on-one dinners, or just like things that could be perceived the wrong way. We try to always have like couple friends, not just like, oh, one person has a friend and the other. I mean, it's just a safer environment to have couple friends, right? And to be close with a couple versus being close to just one person. And then this might be a hot take, but I don't think after you're married you should have a best friend of the other gender, or of the opposite gender. It just is not a wise idea to share intimate details about your life with somebody of the opposite gender. You can find someone, I mean, you should, your best friend should be your spouse, but I understand too, like, you can't, there's benefits of having friendships, but really you can find someone of the same sex to really share those, like, share different parts of your life with, and it doesn't need to be somebody of the opposite gender. And that's a me thing, and I think that's a respect thing too. Yeah. Anything else that I
No, I think you answered it perfectly.
Yeah.
I think it just like it just goes back to honor. Like, you and your spouse have to have that discussion on what they feel is comfortable, and then at the end of the day, they're your priority. Honor them, and then, you know, no other relationship matters more than first your relationship with Christ, and then your spouse.
Yeah.
Awesome. So speaking of honor, what does submission look like in marriage? And what do you guys think are some misconceptions you feel like society has tied to it? Al, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, so this is fun because there's such a negative connotation associated with submission, and every wedding you hear it, it's like, wives submit to your husbands, and it's just like you're like, man, that's so like constricting. I don't know. It's just like this
So
is
like 1800s.
yeah, it's like very old school mindset.
Yeah.
What's awesome is our pastor actually is breaking down First Peter, and he talked about this verse last week, and I really loved how he put it together. So I'll read it from First Peter chapter 3. It's verse 1, and it says, "Wives, in the same way, submit yourselves to your own husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives." And I love that because, first of all, it's not just saying wives have to submit, it's a mutual submission because it says wives in the same way. So in chapter 2, it's talking about submitting to the authority that God's placed in your life. It's speaking to like just like political, secular leadership that you're submitting under. And so men have to submit ultimately to the Lord. And so in the same way, wives submit to their husbands. And at the time when this verse was written, historically, it was written because women were the weaker vessel physically. It doesn't mean that they're weaker emotionally, spiritually, or any other area. But at that time, it was written. Typically, women were the the weaker vessel physically, and so that's why it kind of was written that way. Our pastor said something. He's like, actually nowadays probably the opposite. I know a lot more stronger women than me because people are in CrossFit and doing all these things. I was like, yeah, actually, that's facts. So in the context of marriage, submission, I think comes back to honor, and I think we actually went through our marriage counseling book. There's a couple things that we really liked. Um, First, we'll tell you what submission is not. So, biblical submission is not blindly following your spouse into anything. So, the wife is not blindly following me into anything. Um, it's not being inferior in any way. Like I said, it's not that you're lesser in any area. And the third thing is it's not physically, emotionally, or mentally allowing abuse or violation of the law. Submission is not any one of the things, but biblical submission is um, it's coming willingly under your husband's leadership. It's encouraging him through words and actions, and it's understanding that we're different and that the husband has specific responsibilities that are different from the responsibilities of wife, and just understanding that fact. You have anything to add, Debbie?
No, I think yeah, he kind of covered like the piece that I would say it's not about being inferior to him. It's not about being less than to him, but it is in a sense coming under his leadership, right? Like you don't really have like two heads. There's one head, and you come under that. And what are the ways that I can support him as a wife? Like how can I encourage him without you know without letting if I sense that this is not the things that he's directing is not biblically sound, then having conversations about that. But if I know that he's submitting to the Lord and he's submitting to Jesus, then I have no doubt or no fear that what he's instructing for us and for our family, I know that in confidence that he's leading us, in the ways of the Lord. And so I have no problem respecting that and honoring that. And I show that through my actions. And yeah, I think that's what submission looks like for us.
Yeah, and it's her trusting that I am submitting to the Lord, and that she's putting her trust in me that I'll be able to lead our family in the right way. But I guess the misconception is that she has no say in any of it. Like I'm making all the decisions, I'm doing everything. That's not the case at all. We're a team, and that's one thing that we've been saying from day one. It's like you and I together are a team, and that's it. Like, and so we work together, like for all these big decisions. Like, yeah, I may be the one that makes the final call, but we talk about everything: the pros, the cons, the 1,000 different outcomes of what could happen, and we pray about it, and we come to a decision together.
Yeah.
But she trusts me to carry it out and to ultimately make the decision on some of these things. And so I think it goes just back to trust, but understanding that you still are doing this together, and it's not like she doesn't have a voice or she doesn't have anything that to add to the relationship. Because man, without Priya, I don't know what I would do. I'm pretty just a basic guy, and she
Well,
adds a
no, I
lot to me.
think I think the cool part of marriage is like you both come with this like really unique perspective, right? And so like you thinking about something and making a decision by yourself, like that's one thing, but I think together like when we collaborate, like that's when we're like our best selves, and that's when like the best decisions come forth. And so no, it's never just him making a decision unilaterally or me telling him like this is the decision. We talk it out, we pray about things, and ultimately we know that when we work together, like that's always when we're putting our best foot forward. So it's cool to see that. That's a cool part about marriage.
I absolutely love that answer. I think
So
that's so good.
Sorry,
long-winded.
that was a
We
lot
are
of words.
long-winded.
No, no, it was so good. It was so well explained. I loved it. Two things I'm gonna piggyback off of what y'all were saying though. I think in the society that we live in today, there's just such a move for like feminism and like listen, like it's not the like here's the thing. God has definitely called women to leadership, and God has called them to take on roles, to lead initiatives and things like that. But he is also like marriage is a divine institution, and God has set some structures together because he knows how this is going to work the best. For those of us who are single, I think the best thing for us to do in this season is to learn to surrender to Jesus, because that in and of itself is going to teach us that when we enter into the institution of marriage, we'll know what it means to honor, and we know what it means to, as women, just to submit to your husbands, right? It's not about you losing power. It's more so that God has intentionally placed the husband as the head of the house, and you are just trusting and just going with it. This next question is a hot topic, because, again, going back to the time that we're living in, I think it's normal to try everything and anything when it comes to physical intimacy before marriage. I've even had situations where, people will ask, like, okay, like, have you had your first kiss? Like, have you done this and that? And to answer no to that is almost weird. It's like, huh? Like, you haven't done anything? And so the next question, Priya, this one's for you. What are your thoughts on this, and why do you think purity is so important when it comes to the context of marriage?
Why is it an uncomfortable thing right now to be like, oh, I have no experience in this area? It's because of the way that sex is portrayed, right? It's portrayed in the movies and in conversation. Like you're exposed to it at a much younger age, right? Like I think if we talk to our parents, like they'd probably say that it wasn't even talked about at all, like even like well into their 20s, like it was like a very taboo subject. But now you can spot like kids in grade school who know what it is, right? Which is just like a crazy thing. The exposure, and it's not just about the exposure, right? Because we're not trying to say that sex is a dirty word, but the way that it is portrayed, right? That it is this very like instant gratification thing. It is something that everyone should try out. It's something that, it's a way to express yourself. Like it's very skewed the way that it's presented. And I think that's just a, a design of the enemy to take something that God has like created for a husband and a wife, and to just kind of make it something that it's not. And I think you really only realize the importance of purity, I think, once you're within a marriage, because you understand that sex is really something that is incredibly important and uniting to a husband and wife. And so to have something like that outside of marriage, like no matter how you look at it, how you slice it, like it's gonna bring in emotional baggage. I mean, it's gonna bring in all sorts of baggage that you might not even be aware of. It's bringing that into the table, like once you go into your next relationship. Like it's hard. I know it's like very, very much portrayed that you can have like a friends with benefits thing, or you can try something to know that you're good at it or bad at it, but it's bringing in a lot of baggage. And I think you'll that's something that you'll have to carry on. And I think when sex is used as designed by God throughout marriage, it's something that brings a couple together, that unifies something, and it's something that separates out your relationship from any other relationship, right? And so just to I think when we take God's word and we apply it to our lives the way that he has designed it for us, I think you see the fruits of that, right? And when you take it out of context like that, you do see that there are repercussions to it. And so I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I like really hit that question, but it's something that maybe waiting outside of marriage, you might be like, oh, I'm missing out on something, or maybe I should experiment here, try something here just so I'll know, um, you know, I don't know, just so I can be cool, or just so I'll know I'll be good at it once I'm married. I think, again, like what the Lord has planned for you and how the Lord has designed this thing is is for the best. And I think it brings for a more healthy marriage. I don't know
Yeah.
if that like really hits what we're talking about here.
I think you answered that perfectly. But I think the only thing I would say is it essentially, purity essentially, it guards your heart. Like, one of my pastor friends said it this way, like, each time you allow yourself to go past a certain level of intimacy, it's like a piece of your heart is now given to somebody else. And it's like that the baggage that comes with that is just, it's a lot, you know. And when you, if eventually that your relationship doesn't work out or whatever, you're left with, you know, a fraction of your heart, you know, you're a fraction of yourself. And so to come back from that, it's going to take a lot of healing and a lot of just, you know, a lot of being in the Lord's presence. So I think to it's just, purity is so important because you're guarding your heart and making yourself, you know, just protected, you know, for from any of the things, so that when you do get to marriage and find who God has in store for you, then that it's that much better, you know. It's you've protected yourself, you've guarded yourself, and that you can truly fully enjoy what God has, you know, set aside for you.
And I think two more things. I think there's also fruit that purity produces, right? Self-control and discipline, like things like that. There are fruits to purity that you can see, like in your singleness. And two, if purity is something that you struggle with, know that there is forgiveness, there is healing, there is restoration. This is by no means saying that, you know, once if you haven't stayed pure before marriage, that there's no place for you in God's presence. Like, of course, there's healing, restoration. There's a way to have a beautiful and healthy marriage. All of that is still there, but there are reasons why God has intended for sex to be between a husband and a wife, and I think you'll see the fruit of that in marriage.
I just wanted to ask you guys personally, like, you know, if you guys don't mind sharing with us, what are some challenges that you guys have had being married? I know we talked about the little things in the beginning, but like,
You want me to take it away?
That's you. Go for it.
Well, this morning, what happened was, no, I'm just kidding. I mean, honestly, we're luckily still in that like honeymoon phase. We haven't been married for too long. So have we had like this big full-fledged fight or like, you know, a really terrible fight? No, we haven't. I would say when we do fight, we find that it's always because, and by fight, I mean like we're upset by it. Like we can't get over it in like 5 minutes. Like what I'd call like a 5 minute thing is like a squabble, right? Like a disagreement. But like for fighting, like I can feel like my emotions like still, you know, stirring like later that day, you know? I think we find that in most moments, what causes like a fight or like a stronger disagreement is one, we're tired, or two, we're hungry. Like, honestly, it's so silly, but like, for some reason, we'll like choose to have like really big, important conversations when we're like super hungry, or at like midnight when we're like trying to go to sleep. So we find that we don't make any big decisions until after we've had a Snickers bar or after we've had like a full night of sleep. And what's a big disagreement or really that we've had where we've
I mean, I feel like most of the fights that we've had or the challenges we had, if you really look at it, it's comes down to uncommunicated expectations.
yeah,
That's
it's
the
going
heart
back
of
to
it.
expectations.
Yeah,
Like
it could be the smallest thing, but over time, if that thing is not met in your mind, it starts building up, and then until it's the straw that broke the camel's back, right? It happens one more time, and then it just
and all this
explodes. And I feel like for both of us, like we're both just generally nice people. Like we don't like conflict. We just
Yeah.
we like things to
kind of passive. We're passive aggressive.
little passive
Yeah.
aggressive, and there's only a handful of times, and it's
Oh
right.
no, I have an example. I have a really good example. Okay. Al is very like outgoing. He is very much a people person. Like he gets energy from being around people, social situations. And I thought I was, and then 2020 happened, like the pandemic happened, and I started working from home. And I think I'm just a really extroverted introvert. like I think I know how to be extroverted, but I think I am introverted. And so I'm kind of more so like a homebody. Like I get energy like by myself, you know, like I
There
read.
is a word for it, ambivert.
Oh, is it?
Oh, well, I didn't know that.
Okay, well, yeah, that's what I am. Uh, I I was finding that like some weeks we were doing a lot of different things, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and there was like I didn't like explain it to him at all. Like it was just happening, right? We were doing like so many things every day, and I had him just like I think it was like probably midweek, and I think I asked you like what are our plans for the rest of the weekend, and he started listing off everything, and I just started crying, and I was like, this can't be life, like I can't do this. And he was so thrown off. He was like, what are you talking about? Because to him this is like pure gold, like getting to like hang out with people and like
Yeah,
seeing
and it's not
people.
like we were doing anything like crazy, right? But it's just
No,
like, we're having date nights with other couples, like we're
there's like a church thing, and
right,
then you know we've got to go hang out with our parents and
right.
do this or that, like small little things. We're running errands, and I was like, if I have to go to Walmart tomorrow I will literally die. Like I was freaking out. And I think um really like again it's just about the communication, right? So like understanding, I at a certain degree I have to understand that we can't just like stay at home every single day, right? Like that wouldn't be good for him, I mean really for me either.
And I have to understand that we can't be go, 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 go. We have to have times just for ourselves where
Yeah,
we can just kind of disconnect, recharge, and like I can't expect her to be like me in the sense of like I was always like 100 miles an hour just going, doing things every day, I need to value this relationship that God's trusted me with, and it's if it means saying no to certain things, then so that I can spend time with my wife and that we can sit at home on the couch and watch a movie, then that's what I need to do. I think ultimately it goes back to um, communicating these expectations and ultimately honoring your wife, your spouse, because like I said, outside of your relationship with Jesus, this is the most relationship you'll ever have. And so honor that relationship. And like what I've learned is like with my guys, like we'll have dinner every once in a while, but it's not like at the level of what we used to when I was in college. And that's okay. I think they understand, and we understand that we have to foster this relationship well and steward this relationship well.
yeah. And I think going back to the first part of like we don't make any sort of decisions when we're like not at our best, like yeah, like don't, if you're talking about like really big things like you know where you're gonna buy a house, or what church you're gonna go to, like those types of things, like make sure you're setting it up in an environment that is like really good. And so yeah, like bring snacks, bring whatever it is, like do whatever you can, think about it beforehand, do whatever you can to make the conversation go smoothly. Because um like having these big conversations, like if your spouse catches you off guard, you don't want to hurt the other person's feelings by saying something really quickly and not being sensitive to the other person. So like
Yeah.
just be smart about stuff like that too, because yeah, like it might not be a really big deal, like the thing that caused the fight, but you could say something that potentially like really hurts your spouse's feelings. And so just be super aware of like um the conditions of before you have like a conversation.
Yeah, I can give you an example just real quick. It's, they always tell you this, like, there's only a handful of things that you really, really fight about. And for us, one of those things is finances. It's like one of the most uncomfortable conversations ever. And we find like anytime we talk about finances, it's always a tough conversation just because I don't know, it's very uncomfortable. And there's been times, so I work at a hospital, so I go into work every day. Priya works from home, and there was one day I had just the worst day at work. It was a horrible day. Come back home, and my expectation when I come back home is just change, get into my home clothes, sit on the couch, maybe play some PlayStation, just be next to her and just kind of just chill. But the moment like I sat down, Priya, who hadn't been talking to
Yeah.
anybody, like she's literally on a computer all day, like she's interacting with people via webcam or a computer, Teams chat. So she just wants to talk
I
and
get out my Excel spreadsheet and I
yeah.
put on my glasses and I'm like, let's look at our bank statement.
Yeah. She's like, all right, so here's what we have to talk about, blah 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 blah, and she'll talk. And meanwhile, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I've had the longest day, and I just kind of hold it all in. And what I've noticed is, and she'll probably tell you, like, I'll just shut down, like I'll just stop talking, because I know myself, and I don't want to say anything that'll like upset or like ultimately like cause more damage than good. And so I just kind of stop talking, and then Priya will get upset in that moment because she's like, "Why didn't you say anything?" And I think later that night we kind of step back and see, okay, like she understands, like, okay, you had a long
It
day at
was my
work,
bad. It was my bad because I wasn't like aware of,
right?
or it's not even that I wasn't aware. I wasn't being sensitive to the fact that he had just come back from a long day. That is not the appropriate time to have a conversation about anything important, right?
And it was on me too because I didn't communicate like, hey, what I want to do after work is just kind of just decompress and chill. Like I didn't say that because there's been times where I've come back and we've had these conversations, but that specific day, like I didn't really communicate that. So I think it just goes back to communication, over communicate. What we learned in our marriage counseling is just over communicate, even for the smallest things. Like just make sure it's communicated, and that way there's no surprises later on. And so I think what we learned is just finding that healthy medium of like, yeah, we won't have conversations when we're hungry. We won't have conversations when we're sleepy or tired.
These are takeaways for really any of your
Any relationship, actually, yeah. Not just marriage. I think just any relationship.
Yeah.
Bring food and make sure you're well rested.
Sounds like a plan. So taking a different direction. So in this day and age, we know divorce is on the rise. What would you say, Alex, are some proactive ways for couples to handle broken relationships?
Yeah, so it's we've talked about this too. It's sad because I feel like nowadays we're seeing a lot more broken marriages and broken relationships, divorce, and it makes me really sad because some of these people have been together for years, and it's just um, it is really sad. But I think when I think of this question, how do you handle broken relationships? What are proactive ways to kind of help that? I think first and foremost, um, you need accountability. You need mentorship. You need a strong couple that you're able to be open and vulnerable with, to kind of speak to these things with. Um, you have to have that conversation with each other. Like if there's something that's bothering you, communicate that early on. Because a lot of these problems, what I see is it's over time. It kind of festers over time, and going unnoticed or if you don't really talk about it, then it'll just grow into something way bigger than it should be. So I think talking with your spouse first, and if it's something that you guys can't handle yourselves, go seek counsel. There's such a negative connotation associated with counseling, but I think I think proactive counseling is a great thing. It doesn't always have to be reactive counseling. Like when something bad happens, you go see somebody. I think it's healthy to have those those checks to make sure you guys are doing okay. And I'll stand by counseling forever. I think it's such a healthy thing for people to do for your mental health and your well being, and especially in marriage, just having someone that you can be completely vulnerable and open, honest, transparent, is so crucial. Being surrounded by people who want to see you succeed, but also who will ask you the hard questions. I think in today's culture, we're surrounded by a lot of yes men and yes women. We align with people who will say what we want to hear, but not necessarily what we need to hear. And I think it's so crucial to have those accountability partners in place, especially in your marriage, so that they'll say like, "Hey Al, like what you said to Priya the other day, that's not okay ever, and you need to go and apologize." I think we as humans don't like to be corrected, and we don't like to have someone say that we're doing things the wrong way. But it's so important in marriage that you come in with humility and understand, like, man, this is something that you're going to be learning about every single day for the rest of your life, and you're never going to be an expert. It's just, you have to understand that. And I think just having the right safeguards in place ultimately having the accountability, being able to have conversations with your spouse, and then the most important thing, make sure your connection to Jesus is the most important thing. Um, that you're spending time with Him individually and together, and that He is your foundation. Because I think himself, He'll solve all these issues, but I think that has to be your first and foremost, and then setting yourself up with accountability and different relationships that can kind of help grow you both.
Yeah, I think I just and speaking to people who are still like in the waiting season, um, mentorship, accountability, having someone pour into you is a very important thing. That is a concept that you can have throughout your life. It doesn't just start like when you're married, right? It's important to have someone speak into you, someone who's wiser, who's older, who is walking with the Lord. Um, I mean, it's a very important thing to have because there's a lot of blinders that you have when you're looking at yourself and you're evaluating yourself and your actions. So that's important. And yeah, what Al hit on was with divorce. I think the most important thing to remember with marriage is that it's really not possible to have a good, successful, fulfilling marriage without Jesus, right? So if you're not walking daily with Jesus, it is going to be impossible to have a successful marriage. And so, yeah, I think just all of those things together. Of course, we're still like very early on, we're newlyweds, but these are safeguards that we're trying to put up in order to protect ourselves because we are very aware that, most couples that are getting divorced nowadays, it's like people that you don't even see coming. So it's important to stay vigilant, to stay proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah, and I think to that point too, I think a lot of what I've seen and what I've heard is, if there's an issue in your marriage, kind of brushing it off as, oh, it's not that big a deal, or this is just how things are going to be. Don't be okay with that. Communicate that to your spouse. And then, like I said, if there's an issue, then take that to counseling, take that to an older couple or somebody. Don't ever accept things the way they are. I think we talked about it a little bit ago, but anything that makes you feel unsafe, anything that doesn't make you feel valued or honored in a relationship, then speak on those things because we want to make sure that in a marriage it's healthy, it's thriving, and that ultimately you're honoring each other.
Yeah, no, that's so good. And I know, based on what you guys were saying, I know as a team, we definitely advocate for accountability and counseling, because one of those things that I feel like we repeat all the time is you don't have to be walking this life alone. Whether you're single, you're dating, you're engaged, you're married, no matter what season that you're in, it's so important to have people to come alongside of you. And I would also say to pray for people who are wise because you can get bad advice. You can get people speaking into your life that shouldn't be speaking into your life. So that's definitely that's awesome. And Al, I love that you said to be proactive about counseling. Don't wait until you have an issue to go to counseling, right? Because there are things it's better to root out the weeds early than to wait until it's choking you, right? So I think that's awesome. So moving on, this next question is for both of you. So if you could give advice to yourself before you were married, what would it be?
I guess for me, understand that there's a difference between a towel that you can use and there's a towel that's just for show. I didn't know there was such a thing. So when I wash my hands, I just dry it on this towel. And she's like, "Wait,
How
what are
very
you
dare you?
doing?" I was just like, I never knew, but now I know, and I'll stop all my guys before they wipe their hands on those show towels because those are just for show. No, but real talk. Advice to myself pre-marriage. Um, I think for me, um, it would just go back to I think what we talked about earlier is don't be afraid to communicate anything. Like in marriage, I've learned like the smallest thing that I let pass or I kind of brush off, it just kind of just sits there and I become upset about just the dumbest stuff. So I would say, just communicate everything. Priya is a very understanding person, so I don't know what I'm scared about to upset her. Um, I just think if I could go back, I would tell myself like, hey, just communicate when you're upset. It'll save you a whole lot of headache and heartache in the grand scheme of things.
Um, I think for me, I don't know if anyone can relate, but like when I was in my waiting season, I had a lot of expectations for like what life would look like for me, like as a wife, like as me playing my role as a wife, and then how we'd be together as husband and wife. And a lot of those things that I was expecting, I wasn't really doing in my single life beforehand. So, for example, I had this dream that, when I was married, that I would all of a sudden become a morning person that would wake up, that would have coffee and breakfast and like all this stuff. And like, no part of my 20s did I show any signs of being a morning person, right? Or like, what were some of the other things that I would be like a really good saver when historically I was such a spender. Like I would be like a lot of spontaneous spending, or that I would be very disciplined in like working out. Like I would wake up at like 4 a.m. and start working out. I never did that before. Like I don't know what I was really thinking of. Like once you say I do, like all of a sudden you become this like really different person. Like that's not gonna happen. So I think my advice to my single self would be the person you want to be when you're married before you're married. Like you don't have to wait to be like your ideal best self. Like you can become a disciplined person beforehand. Like I think for me, I had this like really twisted idea that like I was only half a person when I was single, and I was waiting for my other half to like really start life and to begin life and to have fun and all that stuff. No, like you are fully complete as a single person. Your spouse, before you is a fully completed person. When you come together, it's not two halves making a whole. It's two whole people collaborating and complementing each other, making each other better, refining each other. And so I would strongly suggest be the person that you want to be as a wife or as a husband before you're married. You do not have to wait till
Yeah,
after you're married.
I love that a lot. It's be the best version of yourself up like to get to marriage, and you're not gonna stop growing once you hit marriage. Like don't work so hard, get to marriage, and then stop working. Like I think you have to continue pushing yourself and growing.
Yeah.
But like Priya said, you can't expect to learn all these things overnight. So if you're a guy and you've never done a budget in your life, or you've never looked at your finances outside of when you get your paycheck, you see that amount and then that's it. I think take those steps to learn that, because you're going to be required to do that in marriage. So I think take every opportunity to make yourself better, more rooted in the word, more disciplined, healthier. Pastor Michael Matthew in Houston, he says before you get married, there's four areas you have to be, strong in. That's physically, emotionally, financially, and spiritually. And so those four areas, just make sure you're strong in that. Don't stop pushing yourself. Don't stop growing. And then even into marriage, together, push yourself to grow in those areas. Because I will say, I wasn't the best at a lot of things, but since marriage, Priya has helped push me to become even better than I could have ever imagined. And so it's like one of those things, you're constantly growing together. You're constantly pushing, constantly encouraging, and yeah, just never settle, I guess.
I think that's a good thing to look for in a person, or a good sign of you found the right person. Are they pushing you to be your best self? Are they pushing you not by force, but do they inspire you, or do they bring out the best in you so that you want to get better? That's a good thing, because that's what marriage is. It's you pushing each other.
Yeah, and you see the best. You see the best in the other person, and you want to bring that out, and you want to help get them to what you see them as. Because yeah, it's they always will see higher than what you probably could ever see for yourself. And so that's the awesome thing about marriage. It's like I said, we're a team pushing each other to be the best versions of ourselves together.
Prepare for what you pray for. That's so good. Um, so we have a couple more questions before we wrap up. But this next one is interesting because I think throughout the course of these last couple of months, we've talked a lot about the fact that God has kingdom purpose for you as a married couple, or as a unit. But one thing that I don't think that we hit yet is the concept of ministry within the home. So take a little bit of time and just talk about that. What are some practical ways for couples and families to be faith focused, even in the midst of like crazy schedules and the busyness of life? Like, how can we minister within the unit of a family before we try to minister outside?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I can talk about a little bit of my life. Like before I got married, I've been blessed to be able to help minister at a lot of different things, whether it be mentoring people or leading worship or playing bass or whatever. When I was single, I would do that all the time. I feel like every weekend I was somewhere helping, doing anything. And when I got married, I learned really quickly that that's not going to fly because you always hear, but your first ministry is your marriage. You have to steward that well. Like I always look at it as God trusted me with Priya, and I have to, I have to be a good steward of Priya. And if I'm never at home, I'm ministering to people, leading worship, doing whatever, but not stewarding my relationship with Priya or stewarding my family, leading my family well. Like I guess I'm leading from a broken place, an incomplete place. I think in order to have a strong ministry, you need to first focus on your family. God gave marriage for a specific reason, and unless you have, um, you're focusing on making sure her needs are met, making sure you guys together are spending time in the word and praying, and not only that but making sure that's like a foundation of your marriage, that'll propel you into so much more than what you could have done by yourself. I think ways that we can kind of make that a priority in the midst of busyness is like we said earlier, like kind of disconnecting, taking time to say no to things. You don't have to say yes to every opportunity. um, the right opportunity at the wrong time is still the wrong opportunity, right? And I think we have to pray and trust that God's going to speak on what we need to say yes to, what we need to say no to. But ultimately, every decision has to come in collaboration with your spouse, because when like if I'm in ministry after I get married, now we're in ministry together, and so I'm not going to be the one that's going to be making this decision on what to do. It's going to be what is God telling us to do together as a family, and you prioritize that first. And I think when you honor that, God honors you, and He'll take you places like you could have never imagined. But I think it first comes with honoring what He's trusted you with.
Yeah, and I think you can take the whole ministry starts at home concept too. Like even when you're in the waiting season, if you find yourself doing a lot of activities or being involved in a lot of ministries, but you find that your relationship with your parents is strained, your relationship with your siblings are strained, like the same principle still kind of carries over. Like if there's like something broken there, like really how effective is your ministry if you can't get like some of the basic stuff right? So really focus on like honoring the relationships and fostering the relationships that you have in your home before putting all your energy into all these outside things. I try to think about it in a light of like some of these ministries that, I mean, I think this is something that I took whenever I was single before I got married. Um, like with the even when we were doing like Living Stones, like the worship school stuff, like if I were to bring any one of the people involved in that ministry to my house and they saw the way that I spoke to my parents, like would they feel would they still trust me, as being part of the faculty or the staff? Like, people should find that, the relationships and the care that you have at home really mirrors like what you're presenting on the outside. So it's important, it's vital to get those things right at home, because that's your roots, that's where everything begins, and out of that overflow comes the rest of your ministry. So really hit hard on that, like especially now, if you're in the season of waiting, practice that principle before you're married, so that it flows right in to your marriage, and always prioritize those relationships first.
I have one more question. I know I didn't prep you guys for this one, but I know we've been super serious this whole time. We got some heavy topics. So, to wrap us up really quick, what would you guys say is your favorite date night?
So I'm gonna say the one that I like the most, and then you can tell me.
uh,
Um, so it was one of our um, month anniversaries. Every month so we got married on September 5th. So every month on the 5th we try to do something. So
Not anymore, not after one
not
year.
after 1 year, not after 1 year, but that first year, here in that lovey-dovey stage. One of the months we had a chef come to our apartment, and we learned how to make pasta from scratch, and we made chicken piccata from scratch, and we made tiramisu from scratch.
Everything
And
was from scratch.
it was crazy because, like, man, she brought everything. She came to the apartment. She taught us how to cook. We did everything, and then she cleaned up everything. At the end of the day, like, we had a meal in front of us that we cooked, and she cleaned everything, and then just slipped away. And
So
it was
basically, our favorite date is when someone comes and cleans up after us.
that was it. That was it. We ended the date with a clean apartment, full stomachs, and it was awesome.
No, it was. I mean, it was fun. Cooking classes are just super fun. I think it's super ideal when like very minimal work is required. What else? We did like a DIY, like painting with a twist at our apartment once. That was a lot of fun. Um, the most fun date nights are like the spontaneous ones. Like, one time I saw a TikTok about this like board game at Target. It's like a murder mystery, and it was like, I don't know. It's like you basically get like the crime scene. It's a cold case, and you get all the files like from the cold case, and you're just trying to solve the mystery. And it was like so simplistic. Cheapest date night we've ever had. We just like ordered a pizza, played this game. We had so much fun. We
Yeah.
had like literally so much fun. And that, like, financially was like a win, and also it was a win with the fun times.
Yeah.
Right? Because the chef thing was fun, but you can't do it a lot because it was pretty
It
expensive.
wasn't fiscally responsible to do that every month, but this one was fun. And we found over that we like to do date nights where there's some sort of competitive thing.
yeah.
We're both very competitive.
Yeah.
I do not like to lose to her. She does not like to lose to me. And so any opportunity we get to kind of compete, and
We don't even have to say it. Like, I noticed if there's like a long hallway and we're like trying to get somewhere, like slowly, like I'll start walking faster, and then he'll start walking faster, and then we're like in an all-out sprint.
yeah,
We
we'll
didn't
sprint.
even say like ready, set, go, but in our minds, like everything is a competition. If we're both driving somewhere, like it's always, I mean, everything is a competition. So
Yeah.
really,
Those are the fun. I think find fun in the little things. Like, I think that's the best thing about marriage. I think is like anything can
we
be a
said
date.
that's the best thing about marriage 12 times. Can you cut out like at least
Yeah.
like 11 of them?
Anything could be a date. Like, we went to Target one time and did like that Target.
That is a date.
Yeah,
Target is a date.
That was
Come
fun.
on.
That
Right?
was awesome.
Target is a date.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Just
I don't
finding
even
joy.
really need him at Target. It's still a date.
true.
It's like a self-care day.
Find joy in everything, and I think that's what we try to do. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
She's cool sometimes.
Did we answer any of the questions?
Yes, you did.
I'm like rewinding back, and I'm like, I don't know if we answered any one of the questions.
No, you guys did. And Target I can spend hours at Target. Not buy anything, just like watch and walk and just
You're better than us. I don't know how you don't buy
It's
anything.
Yeah,
like,
that's, I was about to say, I walk into Target and
no.
easily spend more than I expected to spend.
Exactly.
So I have to be very self-controlled,
I
guys.
walk into Target and it's like, treat yourself, get
you
I
go in
think
for one thing and it's like, your total is $300.
exactly.
Yeah. I think we went in one time to buy like the like dish soap or something, and then we walked out with like a couple of decor items, like groceries, and I was like, "How do we
A
spend
shirt, sunglasses, shoes.
Yeah, how do we spend $300? I was expecting to spend 10.
Yeah.
Guys, this is why I do the drive up and pick up thing now, because I'm like,
Yeah,
I cannot go inside.
Yeah. You can't.
that's actually
He
really
doesn't
smart.
let me. He'll be like, is this a grocery store thing or is this a Target thing? And I'll be like, I guess it's a grocery store thing.
Even
Yeah.
if you like bought the stuff and you're walking up like to the front, something catches your eye and you're like, wait, hold up. You gotta go back.
Every time. It's terrible.
Priya's eye gets caught on the magnolia, like the stuff.
Yes.
So every time we'll walk
Studio
through
McGee.
Studio McGee, yeah.
Whoa.
We'll walk through and she's like, "Ooh," and then somehow we'll always end up with some sort of like decor piece.
If you ever come visit our place, you'll see a small section of Target, like literally picked
Yes.
up in our.
Do you guys like plants and stuff like that in your house or no?
I didn't until I went to Target, and Target told me that I did.
Hmm.
I literally and I kind of like cleaned out some of my stuff this like last month, and my mom came over and she literally like lined up like 10 of these like different plants. They all are like literally the exact same thing, just like a small difference. And then she took it and put it in her house, literally lined up in a row like
Yeah.
like with her Krishy outside. They're all fake, but it's like literally.
But they look nice.
It does not look nice. It does not look nice.
They look nice. Yeah, I'm the kind of guy that I can't walk into a store and I see like this random obscure plant. I'm like, you know what? That's gonna look great on our coffee table. But she has an eye for that, and so like she'll come home with like this like random thing. She's like, "Do you like it?" I'm like, I just don't see the beauty behind this.
You know what he doesn't know is that I come with like 15 different ones and I try them all out and I return them before he notices. He doesn't know.
But
Y'all have me crying, bro.
Funny.
but when it comes together, it's beautiful. But in the moment, like piecing it together,
Trial and error.
I'm like, how? Like this is like thing on our dining table. Literally, it's just a gold vase with sticks
It's
coming out of
not
there.
sticks. It's the pampas grass. You know what that is?
Yes, I love those.
Like, how? How would you walk to the store and be like, that's gonna be perfect for our table?
I don't ever walk into the store. I go to Pinterest. I do every normal.
Yes.
I don't just.
Yeah.
It doesn't just come alive in my mind. He gives me way too much credit. I don't have any original ideas.
Love protects, you know? You gotta, that's what we learned in marriage.
I'm laughing at Al being like that face. He was like,
Honestly, that's literally my face most days.
anyways, thank you guys so much for talking with us, taking time out of your day. I know you guys are super busy. But I'll just go ahead and end us in prayer, and then Missy can end us wrap this whole thing up. Thank you, Jesus, for this day, Lord. Thank you for everything you've given us. Thank you for allowing us to come today, Lord, to speak in this tea and taboo and listen to what Al and Priya has to say, Lord. I pray that that even today, as the people listen to this video later, Lord, I pray that your presence goes before us, Lord, that they're able to learn and apply these things into their lives, Lord, as well as we three too, Lord. Thank you for letting them pour into us during this time as well, Lord. I pray for their marriage, Lord. I pray that you bless them, Lord. We are excited to see all the things that you will do through them, Lord, and the ministry that they're doing, Lord. I pray that that you bless them tenfold, Lord. And for everyone who's listening, Lord, I pray that you work in their hearts, Lord, that if anyone is going through anything, and that if anyone has any questions, Lord, that they let us know, Lord. I pray that that you bless us, Lord, even in this weekend, Lord. Help us to have good memories, fun times, Lord, and in Jesus' name I pray, amen.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining us the past couple months as we did our whole relationship series talking about singleness, dating, engagement, and marriage. Once again, special thanks to Al and Priya for joining us today. And as always, we are here for you guys. We are here to pray and just to talk and have conversation and build community. As always, continue to be on the lookout for our devotionals each week and our worship videos, and just stay blessed, you guys. Bye.
Bye.